Shmuel and Judas are both really important characters for people to see in a project like this. Judas, of course, being a biblical one, Shmuel not being biblical, but being kind of an amalgamation of Pharisaical resistance or whatever, because we learn, and Luke does such a beautiful job of describing how he sees Judas as somebody who loved his friend and loved his rabbi and was so devoted and was so committed and just wanted to force Jesus to reveal himself as the conquering Messiah that would destroy the Roman occupation, and that he had no intention of getting Jesus killed. In fact, he was so racked with guilt when, instead of overthrowing and destroying the Romans, Jesus acquiesced to the process, that he didn't even wait for the crucifixion. Judas tried to give back the money and then went and took his own life. That's not the action of somebody who was just like scheming for the money and just to get away. He was trying to Jesus was not doing what he thought Jesus should do to reveal himself as the Messiah, so he tried to force him to reveal himself. And then he was so destroyed by getting that wrong and betraying his master that he couldn't live with himself. And that's so, so sad.
Have you figured out why The Chosen Season 5 spent so much time following Kofne, the bereaved father of Rama? I suspect that the show is trying to avoid a major criticism that has plagued the biggest Bible adaptation before The Chosen. I'm talking about the Passion of the Christ. Critics have accused the Passion of the Christ of being anti-Semitic, at least in part because of the scene where the Jewish crowds are urging Pilate to let Barabbas go and crucify Jesus. For many, the crowds come across as if they are filled with irrational hatred of Jesus, which is an anti-Semitic trope. By creating a three-dimensional character like Kafni who will be a part of that crowd, and by giving him understandable motivations and reasons for his hatred, The Chosen is trying to avoid promulgating anti-Semitism. Of course, that doesn't mean that the show is justifying Kafni's behavior or the behavior of the crowd. It's just helping us realize that those who sought Jesus' death were driven by human motivations that we all share and understand, even if they were sinful. Episode 6 of The Chosen Season 5 gives us our first peek at Barabbas, or at least it's the first time that we know that we're seeing Barabbas. The character was actually first introduced in Season 3 of The Chosen. He was intent on killing Simon Z for having left the Order of the Zealots. After witnessing some of Jesus' miracles in Episode 6 of Season 3, however, he decides to leave in peace. Z had hopes that seeing those miracles would cause this character to forsake the order, but it seems that simply seeing miracles wasn't enough to change his heart. Next season, we'll get the famous scene where the crowd calls for Pilate to let Barabbas go instead of Jesus, which represents their choice of sending the nation on the path of the zealots and violence instead of choosing the peaceful Messiah. You want to know the real reason why John is ritually unclean in Episode 2 of The Chosen Season 5? As John and his father Zebedee are delivering their anointing oil to the high priest, they are told that they can only enter if they have avoided ritual impurity for the past 7 days, even if they have ritually cleansed themselves during that period. A list of potential sources of ritual impurity are read, stuff like touching a dead body, touching a leper, or nocturnal emission, aka a wet dream. Zebedee is able to enter freely, but John kind of awkwardly hesitates and claims that he touched a leper. Now, we haven't seen John touching any lepers, and based on his conversation with Malchus, it seems pretty clear that John actually probably had a wet dream and felt awkward saying that in front of his dad. The important thing to realize is that nocturnal emission caused ritual impurity for the same reason as other bodily discharges, like menstruation or blood. Whenever a body lost life fluids, like blood or semen, ancient people saw that as a sign of human mortality. And so the show is not implying anything about John's moral state or his inner life. It's just showing that he is ritually impure and therefore not able to enter into a holy space. Do you know why Mary Magdalene gets so emotional in Episode 6 of The Chosen Season 5? On her way back from seeing Nicodemus, Mary sees a Roman centurion standing around, and it reminds her of the Roman soldier who raped her sometime before the beginning of the show. For a moment, Mary is triggered by her past trauma, just like she was in season 2 when she backslid into drinking. But this time, Mary is able to deal with her trauma and work through it by recalling the words of Isaiah 9 and how when she was dwelling in a land of deep darkness, she saw a great light. Jesus, the light of the world. It's a really beautiful and poignant moment.
I mean, if you look at the scene that they put out a couple months ago in the Sanhedrin, look at that and see whether you think Shmuel is like hates Yusuf. He doesn't. He's exhausted by Yusuf. He's like saying, of course you would say that. Like, you've lost your mind. You're not thinking clearly. He's even like emotional and pleading almost like, you're entranced that this guy can raise the dead. Like, it was such a simple con. Just, hey, Lazarus, my friend from childhood, go hide in the tomb. And when I tell you to come out, and everybody will think I resurrected you. Like, it's that simple. Like, how can you not see that? That's where Shmuel's head is at. So what I love about that scene is we see Shmuel argue with Yusuf out of frustration and love, not out of anger and hate.
We finally have a definitive answer about the identity of the mysterious Watcher from The Chosen Season 5, and I'll admit, it wasn't who I was expecting. I was thinking it was going to be Mark, because he kept writing things down, but it turns out that it is, drumroll, Matthias. Now, I was always open to the idea of Matthias because his character actually makes a lot of sense for this role. You see, one of the key requirements for an apostle was that someone needed to be present for most of the miracles and teachings of Jesus. And the show has created a way for Matthias to have been present and following Jesus around without actually being a part of the group of the disciples. And so he's able to eventually fulfill the role of an apostle once Judas is removed from his office and someone needs to replace him. So I like the idea of the show making this character Matthias, and I'm really interested to see where he's going. Do you know why John the Baptist appears at the Last Supper in The Chosen Season 5? During the Passover Seder, it's Jewish tradition to always leave a place at the table for Elijah as a way of anticipating his return and the start of the new Exodus under the Messiah. In the Gospels, Jesus says that John the Baptist is the new Elijah to come. That is, he is the messenger who is being sent to prepare the way for the Messiah. And so John is taking Elijah's place at the Passover table as Jesus prepares to launch his new Exodus redemption through his death and resurrection. Also notice that John appears right as Jesus says, "Your joy will be full." It's an allusion to how in John 4, John says that he is like a groomsman whose joy will be full when the messianic bridegroom finally comes to take his bride.